So another new law that passed for 2024 is something called payment by electronic funds transfer. It doesn't really have like an official, before I do that, Andrew just posted a little bit of information there in the chat. According to the CDC, there's 605,000 cancer deaths per year. If 21,000 are from lung cancer, then that's 3.5% of cancer deaths. Thank you for investigating that. I don't have handy the website. It was the Illinois Emergency Management Association website, and they cited another organization. I think it was like I said, the Lung Cancer or something association, and that's where they got their stats from. I think everybody knows that if we go from, depending on which agency, they're going to have different stats. But regardless, it's a huge hazard for the radon, which is why Illinois, and I think a lot of states have determined to include radon for tenants as well as the sales. Again, I was like, whatever, radon, but it does convince me that it is an issue. So thank you, Andrew, for looking up that information and for sharing that with us. All right, next, let's turn to the electronic funds transfer. Again, this one doesn't have like an official name, but it has to do with how the tenants are paying their rent by electronic funds there. Take a quick look at that one. Now, for you longtime listeners, you remember that way back, oh my gosh, I just realized at 1 year as of tomorrow, back in 2023, we did a whole landlord workshop on the various rent payment methods that tenants use. And then we also went through and looked at the pros and the cons and methods of each one of these. Not going to go over that, of course, but just wanted to review the various payment methods the tenants can use to pay their rent. Cash, check, cashier's check or money order. Some of us will just automatically debit or pull out that money out of the tenants' bank accounts. Zelle is really popular. Some payment apps like PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, etc. Some of us have property management software where the tenants will go in and automatically pay it. And there's even, independent or, www.whateverrentpayment.com where the tenants can go in and pay. So there's lots of different ways that the tenants can pay their rent. Some of us, like one better than the other. And the problem which led to today's presentation about the new law is that some landlords are making some of these mandatory, and that was causing problems for tenants. As part of the landlord workshop we did back in 2023, I talked about this Harvard study that they did, and unfortunately, this is the most current one that anybody ever could find any data for. A huge chunk of the tenants are not using electronic payments to send their rent. So 22% of tenants, and this is across the United States, 22% of tenants are still paying rent by cash, 42% are paying by check, 16% are using money order. When you add these three together, that's 80% of tenants across the United States are still paying rent via these methods and not sending rent electronically. They found that, bank account, bill payment, whatever, or, a lot of tenants are still not online. Now, of course, that's a really big caveat because I'm sure between 2016 and now 2023, I'm sure a much higher percentage of tenants are paying their rent online. I mean, look at all these millennials and Gen Xers and everything. They're much more online than they used to be. However, that still holds true that I know it's mind-blowing to think about, but a huge percentage of our tenants are still paying rent not online using these three methods. Who just said there in the chat, Sandra, the old-fashioned way. Yeah, it is old-fashioned. And I just cannot comprehend not doing things online, but a lot of tenants are still. So I just gave you that as a little bit of background so you understand. Now we're going to talk about this new law which deals with how tenants are paying their paying their rent, electronically. So they introduced the House bill, and it is now, it's not a new act. What it amends is in Illinois, it's called the Landlord and Tenant Act. So it changed a little section there of that act. And the whole reason that they enacted this new law is they don't want to discriminate against any tenants who don't use banks and can't send funds electronically. There are so many people across the US who actually do not use banks. They even coined a new term for it. It's called unbanked. Again, mind-blowing to me that people don't use banks, don't do things online, because that's all I do. I refuse to use, cash and check. I think you guys probably do as well. but there are a large percentage of people who don't use banks, who are unbanked. And of course, if you don't, it's going to be a real barrier for you to send, for them to send those funds electronically, especially for some of the low income ones. So this new public act is going to be infected for any leases or renewals that are executed after January 1st of 2024. In other words, you write them up, you sign them, and they go into effect. So if you already have a lease that's like midterm and you are requiring tenants to send funds electronically, that can still continue. But as soon as that your current lease expires, that's it. You're not going to be able to require it anymore. You're going to have to comply with the law. So just be aware of that. And this law applies to all rentals in Illinois. It doesn't matter whether on the third floor, it doesn't matter how many, units you have, no exemptions. Everybody who has a rental in Illinois is going to be affected by this. Okay, so let's take a look at what exactly is this law saying. It pertains to electronic funds transfer. And according to the law, what they're saying this means is anybody who is transferring funds electronically so that your bank, your credit union, whatever financial institution can basically pull out or throw money into your bank account. When they say electronic funds transfer, it doesn't matter. I know this is ridiculous, but they're defining it as somebody, if you're having with some of those old fashioned computer terminals, you're sending money using the telephone, a computer. I just can't imagine anybody doing magnetic tape, but that's what they threw in there. So this is what they mean by electronic funds transfer. Anybody who sends money using this way so that money gets thrown into or pulled out of your bank account. And what they're saying, so now these are our landlord requirements. What they're saying for us is we cannot require anybody who is applying to our rental property or our current tenants to only send us the rent or any other payments electronically. And this is what they mean by the electronic funds transfer. Okay, pretty easy. Can't require electronic payment. Now, we can encourage electronic payments, but we can't make them mandatory. So there's nothing wrong within the lease saying, hey, I prefer you send them via Zelle, or I prefer you send them via AppFolio or whatever your property management software is, but you cannot make them mandatory. You have to provide a secondary paper-based method, checked, draft, or whatever paper-based, drop it off at the office, cash, or whatever it is that you want. Pretty straightforward. Just make sure everybody understands. No mandatory online, and you have to provide a secondary method. Paul is saying, however, though, you are still able to require a prospective tenant to have savings in some type of bank account or investment as a cash reserve to cover them for a few months in the event of their loss of income. Correct. We here are only talking about how we receive the payments. Absolutely correct, Paul. So if you can set up other screening criteria that does require a bank account, it's just for receiving the payments that you can't make it mandatory. Yes, thank you very much for clarifying that. And then Claudia was saying, what if your tenant does not have a bank account and not bank, but simply doesn't want to pay electronically? You have to, so the answer is you have to accommodate them as well. You cannot make it mandatory. Doesn't matter if they don't want a bank, they're too lazy. Please excuse my wording here. They're too stupid to figure it out because one of my tenants just can't figure it out. Whatever reason they want to decline sending payments electronically, you have to accommodate them. Yep. Andrew's saying, so if we accept checks as an alternate method, can we still refuse cash? Hold on. That is not a question for the law, Hadi. I think that might be a question for you. So if you accept checks, you are fulfilling the requirement for this law. But Hadi, I don't know if I don't think there's a law that says, hey, I'm accepting checks that allows me to say no for cash. Would you mind answering that one?
So back in the day when there was no Zelle or credit card, things like that, we would collect in-person lot rent. And on a first Friday of the month, you might have, I don't know, $10,000 cash on you. It wasn't safe in middle of Chicago back then.
Yep.
So what we did was on the local currency exchange, you go over there, I think they still offer it. You say, I'm a landlord, I have few tenants, I wanted to come here and pay rent. They say, okay, here's your account number. They give you some random number. And then the tenants goes over there, I would like to pay my rent on account number 123. They give you, they give the currency exchange the cash, and I'm sure these days the currency exchange will deposit like before in your account.
Right. Thank you.
So
So
that's the only way I think. Otherwise, you gotta go over there, collect the cash.
thank you. So just to clarify Andrew's question though. So let's say you're a landlord and you say, I accept checks. You then can say, I refuse cash. I will not accept cash, right? I don't recall seeing any Illinois law that says you must accept cash.
I don't know. This is the first time I'm coming across this, so
Mhm.
I don't even, I mean, we discourage people paying us cash because it's
Yep.
such a pain.
It is. It's a pain, liability. Andrew, I'm going to look it up. I remember when I did that presentation last year about the various methods, I did look into the laws, and I do not remember seeing a law that says we have to accept cash. So, but let me get back to you just to double check. Okay.
Mary, don't get me wrong. We do accept cash at our property management and Cicero. But I refuse to send one of my guys, middle of the night, go to
Right. To go
rent
collect
one
it
of
all,
them.
right?
Go, not collected on even from one tenant. Go get
Yep.
cash. No, 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 we are not in that. On lease, it says they need to pay their rent at our office, not at the
Yep.
bill.
Yep.
Okay.
As you were talking, and then Andrew, this another law just came to my mind, and this doesn't pertain to your question, but there is a law that says I forgot the exact amount, but there's a law that I think says that if you have like 100 or more units within like one building there, you're required to have like on-site management to collect the what do you call it, to collect the payments. But even then, I don't think it says you have to have cash. But again, let me look it up just to make sure about that. Andrew was saying, I'm out of state, so I just want to ensure I can receive either electronic or snail mail check if needed, but can refuse and accept cash. Yep. I'm pretty sure you can still refuse the cash, but I'm a little hesitant to say, yeah, I'm 100% positive. So let me look it up for you. And then how about this? If you don't mind, throw your email address there in the chat. And once I look up the answer, I will get back to you. Okay. All right. And then the last thing, somebody had another little thing that Sandra, so Sandra's saying, can we say we do not accept cash? Okay, so you got a lot of you guys are asking about the cash thing. So let me just look it up then. And how about this at the beginning of next week's presentation? I will give the answer there because I don't do cash. I don't think most of us do, and I just don't recall what the laws say there. Uh, Somebody else had the question. Oh, Claudia was saying about she wanted me to clarify about the bank account thing. So Claudia is saying that her tenant does have a bank account, but can you say no if the tenant just doesn't want to pay electronically? No, you can't. It doesn't matter if the tenant has a bank account, doesn't have a bank account, or anything. It doesn't matter any type of situation. You cannot require electronically. You must have offer electronic, excuse me, you must offer at least another payment method, in addition to the electronic. Okay. Doesn't matter what the tenant is, they have a bank, where they live, what floor, nothing. You must offer another method to pay the rent or other payments if you do the electronic thing. Okay. If you don't collect rent electronically now, don't worry about it. Just continue to collect the rent you normally do because this doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. But I think a lot of us do collect rent electronically. So this is why this law is so, so important. Claudia's saying, what if my tenant does have a bank account but doesn't want to pay electronically? No problem. This law is not saying that we landlords have to accept the rent electronically, and it's not saying that the tenant has to pay electronically. Nothing like that. Nothing mandatory. So we're lucky these laws in 2024, the legislators actually did a pretty good job of balancing out the tenants and the landlords and making it, nothing too super mandatory for us. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. The only requirements are if you do accept rent electronically, just offer another way to accept the rent. We don't have to do electronic. Tenants don't have to do electronic. Okay. And I made myself a note. I'll look up this whole cash thing for the next time. Let me close this window here a little bit. And I think only two more slides for this section here. This one does have some penalties. So this is why it is really important for you to not make sure that you're complying. They're giving us a little bit of a grace period. So as of April 1st of this year, if you knowingly, willingly violate this act, you're going to be guilty of violating what's called the Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Act. So they're giving us a little bit of time, to get used to it, in order to comply. Let's say you are a landlord right now who only accepts electronic payments, and you're going to need a little bit of time to set up the whole check thing, drop me off at the office, whatever it is you want to do. They are giving us 90 days to sort of, get that set up. But be aware that you're not violating, hey, it's not your local building inspector who's going to catch you. It's not some local attorney who's going to get you in trouble. You're going to be in big trouble. This is a major consumer law at the federal level. They don't really specify the penalties, and I tried to kind of look it up, and I couldn't find any. All I could find was what this one article that labeled it deep penalties. Deep. And they said that there is strict liability. In other words, you do something wrong, you're going to be in trouble and you're going to have to pay a lot of money. So don't think that you're going to slide under the radar and just say, I'm going to ignore this. I'm just going to continue to do my Zelle and mandate it and ignore this thing. I'm going to strongly encourage you not to do that, because big, big penalties with big, big money that's attached to it. Heidi, I don't know if you have any comments on this whole penalty or mandating this whole thing.
I looked up Folio. Okay, so your tenant can go to CVS and Walgreens and pay through MoneyGram cash.
Oh
So
yeah, I mean, that's why I mentioned this whole thing here. I mean, there's a gazillion ways tenants can pay their rent. What they're saying is don't mandate these right here. Just
yeah,
figure out there. You guys know who attended this workshop. We spent like 2 hours talking about the whole methods. There's there, there's so many other ways that tenants can pay besides electronic. It shouldn't be an issue for you. It's just deciding which one of these you want to do. Yep.
yeah, even the other state ones, you can set up a MoneyGram account for yourself. They can take that barcode to CVS and pay cash, and you get your money.
Yep.
It's just MoneyGram. Maybe it's $20 fee or something. I don't know how much it is.
Right. Gail has a perfect question I think this is the last slide in this section. Some tips. And Gail, here's the answer to your question. Gail was asking, can we add a service charge for accepting cash? No. Now, the law doesn't say this, but I attended a webinar given by an attorney who really knows her stuff. And she says, do not offer a discount to pay rent electronically as an incentive, and do not charge a fee or penalize them if they don't pay rent electronically. And I guess, Gail, for your question as well, can we add a service charge for accepting cash? No, don't. Because if you offer any sort of incentive or roadblock or barrier or fee for them to not use this electronic thing, it can be viewed as discrimination. And then that's when you're going to get in trouble with this guy accused of this, Consumer Fraud Deceptive Act here. So the tip from that attorney was, don't have any fees, don't offer any discounts, don't offer anything whatsoever. Just say, here's how you pay rent electronically. I also accept, rent via check, cash, whatever it is, and inform them of it. This is fees. Excellent question that you asked, Gail. I think that was it for this one. Okay, that is it for this one. Does anybody have any questions about the first two laws that we went over? I know that it took a long time this time, but as I mentioned, these first ones that I am talking about here today are the biggest ones, the most complex ones, the most detailed ones, but the most important ones. The rest are pretty quick and easy. We'll be able to zip through them, and we'll finish them up hopefully the next time here.